Our journey through football history on a year-by-year basis takes us to the season of 1915-1916. In part 34 of the Football History Rewind, we take a closer look at Pop Warner and the best teams in football in 1915. And it all comes up for you in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And we are in our football history year-by-year mark, our football history rewind, part number 34, and we are at the season of 1915. In this series, it takes you back through all the history of football, a good overlook of what happened and the eventful items of each season. And in the last article, part number 33, we left off in the seasons of 1914, 1915. So logically, we'll pick back up in this edition at the season of 1915, a little bit on 1916. There are quite a few men from early eras of football that had significant contributions to the games and its rules. The list is much shorter, though, for those men that had added such a wide-sweeping changes that their names live on a century later. Pop Warner is one of those individuals that really gave this beloved game of ours some really innovative twists. Now we've talked quite a bit about Pop Warner on some really recent interviews. You can look back at PigskinDispatch.com, go in the search box and put in Pop Warner. You'll see what we're talking about. But you may be asking yourselves, didn't Pop Warner come into football scene much earlier than 1916? Well, you're right. That'd be correct. And he did make a mark in the game earlier than 1916, but that was in a year where Coach Warner himself proclaimed this was his best team ever, 1916. And it's for this reason we've waited until now to give Coach Warner his proper due credit in our Football History Rewind. Now, Glenn S. Warner, the God-given name to a legend that is more commonly known by Pop, to those who knew him and in the history books, well, Pop's association of football spans back to the late 1890s when he coached at Cornell University. In 1899, he left the large New York college to take on coaching duties at a small Native American school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is about 18 miles away from Harrisburg. And it was during that time of his coaching tenure where Carlisle Pop Warner made a name for himself. In a 1931 interview with Collier's Weekly magazine, Warner described Carlisle as being a small, compact, self-contained school, more like a home than an institution. Only Native Americans could attend the small school, so Pop really made a name for himself when he took this small ragtag bunch of natives who were looked down upon by those of the European heritage and played with success against schools that were much larger and wealthier, with many more men to draw from for their football players. As the turn of the century, Carlisle had about 250 college-age men attending their institution, as opposed to the larger eastern schools, which had 4,000 to 5,000 to draw from. To gain some perspective, Carlisle was, under Warner's coaching career, had an average of 3 substitutes for each game. That's remarkable. Only 15 players aside, that would mean. Now, how did the small school compete with the big schools, you may ask? Well, Carlisle did not sit back on its laurels to note that what they did not have. They simply took what they did have and put it to use in its full potential. Carlisle had a coach that understood the game and could innovate with the best of them. They also had great athletes. Does the name Jim Thorpe explain just how good the athletes were? Well, the third advantage Carlisle had over their schools was the desire to win. Warner recognized it was not just to win, but to defeat the white man in a place where the battlefield was equal. The American Indians had little to boast about in that era, and their land had been taken over by the white invaders, and along with much of their culture. The football field provided a place for the downtrodden ethnic group to be equal to that of everyone else they were playing. They could not economically or socially compete with the white man at this time, but they could defeat them at this athletic enterprise. Warner, in that same 1931 Collier's interview mentioned earlier, referred to the situation this way, quote, On the athletic field, where the struggle was man-to-man, they felt the Indian had his first even break, and the record proves that they took full advantage of it, unquote. And when they did, in the first season at Carlisle, the only games Warner could schedule for his squad were on the road. That season, they defeated powerhouse schools such as Penn 16-5, Columbia 45-0, and in San Francisco, they defeated California 2-0. These were the only points scored on Cal that entire season, was those 5 points by Penn. And the Columbia win is very significant and a real testament to Warner's innovation and preparedness. Columbia had a very good halfback named Harold the Hurdler Weeks. What a great name. Weeks made a real name for himself in those days due to a play that Columbia ran in which he would step on the backs of the closely gathered linemen and then literally hurdled the defensive rushers and landed on full stride on the other side. Warner had his players use a questionable but effective tactic of jamming the heels of their hands into the face and gut of Weeks, which was understandably slowed him down considerably. They also used a tactic which made its debut in football during that game, the three-point stance. Pop also planned an offensive shift for the first time in football history during this game. As the score of the game indicated, Columbia did not even know what hit them. They had two very staples of the game introduced to the football world at the same time, and Warner, yeah, he's a genius. Well, the 1915 champions, and we haven't really talked about, and you would think by talking about Pop Warner so much that we would have Carlisle as the best team in the land. Well, almost, but not quite. See, after the 1914 season, Warner moved to the other side of Pennsylvania and became the head coach of the University of Pittsburgh. The Gazette-Times via newspapers.com on September 5th, 1915's edition had an article called "Gridiron Heroes Will Soon Be in Action." In it, the legendary father of football, Walter Camp, was interviewed, and he said, quote, "The shift of Coach Warner from Carlisle Indians to the University of Pittsburgh marks one of the great changes in the status of the game. It should prove very interesting experiment for Pittsburgh and one with great possibilities," unquote. Camp was pretty much right on the money in this prediction. Though the 1915 college football season had no clear-cut champion, the official NCAA Division I football records book lists three schools, Cornell, Oklahoma, and Pittsburgh, as having been selected as the co-national champions. Pitt was truly it, as the old motto goes, in 1915, recording a perfect 8-0 record, beating the likes of Warner's former team Carlisle 45-0, stomping Penn State 20-0, and doubling up Penn 14-7. The mixture of talent and great innovative coaching put Pitt on the map that season. Well, Cornell, interesting enough, another former place where Warner had coached, had also made some noise in the collegiate football scene, also posting a perfect 9-0 record. They defeated Harvard and Penn, among others, that season. Third great team in 1915 in the college landscape was Oklahoma. The Sooners went 10-0 overall by beating Texas by 14-13, and then a tough Kendall Origin Black team by the same score. They were 3-0 in the Southwest Conference, tied with Baylor. And Baylor, however, had an independent loss and finished 7-1. Unfortunately, these two teams, Baylor and Oklahoma, did not meet each other in the 1915 season. The Pro Football Hall of Fame states that the Massillon and Canton rivalry was again stirring, and it was not really been competitive since the 1906 scandal that just shook professional football, especially in those two cities. The Tigers were quite the powerhouse, and the Bulldogs, well, they signed a young guy named Jim Thorpe to play for $250 a game. The best team in pro football in 1915 was at best a three-way tie between Canton, Massillon, and the Youngstown Patricians. The Professional Football Research Association lists 1915 as no clear-cut champion and discounts Youngstown's competition as subpar, as they really didn't play too much good competition. They didn't play Canton or Massillon, or not many of the same teams that they even did. Not the same level of competition. So Canton and Massillon, the next two contenders, well, they tied at 5-2-2 records. As Canton and Massillon, they split their head-to-head matches that season, and the records are incomplete for football, but I think with the recommendation of the PFRA that we're going to go with the Tigers and the Bulldogs tied upon the top spot in 1915's professional football. Now, I guess we're going to stop there because the 1915 season was very exciting. The 1916, as we alluded to just a little bit, even has some more great things happening. So we'll come back to that with our next edition of the Football History Rewind, part number 35, found here only on Pigskin Dispatch. So thanks for joining us here today. We hope you'll be back tomorrow for some more great football history tomorrow here on Pigskin Dispatch and the Pigskin Dispatch podcast. As you can find us on Sports History Network, pigskindispatch.com, and wherever your favorite podcast providers are. So till tomorrow, everybody, have a great Gridiron Day. That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandom at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.